The Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Extra Chapter. Airplane's Fortuitous Encounter, Part 6. After the guards had been sent out of the underground ice fortress, it became empty of all demons. Mo Beijun definitely thought Xiāng Tóngxiù had obediently gotten out already and didn't expect him to turn back, so by the time Xiāng Tóngxiù had returned to the hall in front of those sleeping chambers, he was yet to be discovered. He stopped and shimmied up to that giant pillar which could be circled by 3 people into the ceiling beams, finding somewhere he definitely would not be seen by anyone to sit down. Though he definitely couldn't be seen by others in this area, he also couldn't see them. Mo Beijun's cold and placid voice sounded like he was forcibly stifling anger as he asked, "What are you doing here?" An unfamiliar man's voice smiled, "My nephew is ascending to the throne. I came to ask for a cup of celebratory wine to drink. Is there something unacceptable about that?" Mo Beijun didn't respond. Humming once, he only spoke after a long while. "What celebratory wine is there to drink?" The voice replied, "After these 7 days, you will be the real Mo Beijun. Isn't this something worth celebrating?" Xiāng Tóngxiù knew who this was. This was that storyline that had been set aside until now after the original was thrown into disarray. He's going to die. Everything's going wrong for Mo Beijun. This uninvited guest was Mo Beijun's uncle, Ling Guangjun. And lying in the sleeping chambers was definitely the father Mo Beijun probably had only seen a few times since his birth, his body to be exact. As he had outlined, after the king of each generation of the Mo Bei clan died, they would pass down all their martial prowess in their body to their successor in the next generation. This was an extremely crucial juncture. In the original storyline of his work, Ling Guangjun latched precisely on this crucial juncture and launched a sneak attack on the most critical last day of Mo Beijun's assimilation of his predecessor's body. Since Mo Beijun had been determined as the lawful first in line of succession, Ling Guangjun had no claim to this inheritance and stealing it outright would deem it useless. Illegal was illegal as the lines of ancestors would not acknowledge him. But if Mo Beijun died after he officially ascended to the throne, then Ling Guangjun would be the only descendant left of the Mo Bei bloodline and would instantly make him a rightful recipient of this inheritance. In the original work, Bing Gur was supposedly by his side playing the pig to eat the tiger, easily escorting him through this process and ripping off the Mo Bei clan only after Mo Beijun ascended the throne. However, Bing He had now gone off to shamelessly torment his Shizun. How could he have time to bother with this? The one Mo Beijun had brought back was his useless self. Xiāng Tóngxiù madly grabbed at his hair. "My king, you. Why did you bring me here for? I can't lift a hand, can't carry your burden. How am I qualified to protect you? For this sort of life and death situation, you should definitely find a trusted confidant, your most impressive ally. So what if you had no way to tear Bing He off his Shizun like tearing cowhide candy? At least you could find him to borrow a few thousand black-armored generals? No matter how desperate you were, you can't count on me. Other than for making tea, carrying water, washing clothes, folding blankets, which of my other skills aren't at the amateur level." Without the inextinguishable halo and undying golden body he had personally bestowed upon the male protagonist, at that fatal moment in 7 days, Mo Beijun. Ling Guangjun said, "On this very important day, and you didn't bring a single person." Mo Beijun replied coolly, "I didn't." Ling Guangjun tittered in laughter. "So, you did bring someone? I saw. Just a while ago, I happened to run into someone walking out, that was the Ending Peak Lord who is said to follow you? How did he provoke you that he was beaten to that state? With the rumors I've been hearing, I thought your temper had changed for the better." For a long time, no one replied. Ling Guangjun smiled again. "Your uncle was only asking, why are you looking at me with such a hostile expression?" Mo Beijun said bluntly, "I want you to leave. You're hurting this demon's feelings. Unfortunately, my clan is not yet set. Are others not allowed to witness the succession ceremony?" Moreover, I am your father's younger brother. If not for you, the one standing here today waiting for their inheritance would definitely be me." It looked like Mo Beijun knew that he wouldn't be able to drive him away and didn't say any more on the topic. Ling Guangjun, however, was immensely pleased with himself, not bothering to curb his mirth in the slightest. You've grown up. You're an overlord now. You really are no longer the same. You were much cuter when you were young." Hearing these familiar lines, Xiāng Tóngxiù wiped his forehead of sweat, feeling a bit of shame that he had written such a shameless character. This uncle even had the face to bring up the matter in his youth. Mo Beijun lost his mother when he was young, and the one he had stuck the closest to in his youth was precisely this younger uncle who was not much older than him. However, because of some petty trifles and emotional disputes between the two brothers, Ling Guangjun couldn't quite begin to like this nephew of his. One time, when the other demons weren't paying attention, he coaxed this obedient little nephew out the gate and threw him into the human world, letting a pile of cultivator thugs chase this little demon who didn't understand anything. He had nearly lost his mind out of fear as he fell every few steps while the thugs surrounded him for numerous days. At that time, Mo Beijun's age was only roughly equivalent to a 4-year-old human child. If his father didn't suddenly realize after 10 or so days that his son hadn't been following behind his younger brother these days and casually made a few inquiries, Mo Beijun might have been kept locked up in Huanhua Palace water prison until he was terrified to death. To a demon of that age, a crowd of cultivators circling and shouting at him was like a crowd of flesh-eating, blood-sucking monsters. Imagine a 4-year-old human child captured and locked up into a nest of demons. The reaction would be about the same. The former Mo Beijun had a heart as large as a basin, that of the Sichuan Basin. Either way, his son was taken back in the end, more scared than hurt and not completely headless, so he didn't really pay it much mind. He said a few words to his brother, then told him to continue getting along well with him in the future. After he was fetched back, messy-haired and dirty-faced, Mo Beijun never spoke again to this formerly favorite uncle of his. As he grew older, he got more and more severe, until he was finally unwilling to speak with anyone, and held a deep abhorrence and painful association with any kind of betrayal. Mentally reviewing the history of the melodramatic, aloof young lord that he had created, Xiāng Tóngxiù made some reflections. He mainly reflected on whether the demon race's apathetic and cold nature had been too inhumane. Second, he reflected on why he hadn't just added in a line of setup at first, something like the succession ceremony does not allow idle witnesses to wait nearby, even the next of kin is not allowed. But, now Mo Beijun had to keep watch beside the body and wait for the time of inheritance. He shouldn't leave at will and couldn't drive out Ling Guangjun. Reflecting on one hand while trembling with fear on the other, Xiāng Tóngxiù passed the full 7 days like this until the last day finally arrived. After the 7 days of observance, it was the time for Mo Beijun to officially assimilate the martial prowess within that body, but he very wisely decided not to make the move until the very last moment, and it was now that he needed to make a move sooner or later. Ling Guangjun said, "What is it? Why are you hesitating?" "Because you're standing right there." Ling Guangjun said, "Could it be that you're afraid I'll make a sneak attack?" "How could I? I am your uncle, Mo Bei, you have to hurry. If you don't start now you'll miss the opportunity. There won't be another chance to salvage it. You don't need me to remind you, right?" If he didn't begin immediately, the inheritance would naturally dissipate. It was equivalent to an inheritance of a lump sum of money drifting away in the wind. However, if he immediately started, Ling Guangjun was standing by like a tiger watching its prey, definitely harboring ill intentions. Mo Beijun's current situation was akin to that of having no room to advance or retreat. Everything played out like in the original. Only that there was no invincible Bingur and only an useless Huadi. In the end, Mo Beijun let out a cold laugh. Xiāng Tóngxiù gritted his teeth and braved the possibility of being discovered by a demon and getting a knife to the head as a present, and he stuck out his head. Nearly in the same instant a ball of blue light flew out into the sleeping chambers and covered Mo Beijun. Ling Guangjun suddenly played his hand. Mo Beijun had long been on his guard, saving a hand to catch this treacherous strike. But he was too busy for distractions and let a wisp of demonic energy slide into his palm. This wisp of foreign demonic energy darted about inside Mo Beijun's body. He didn't dare to get careless and could only divide out another piece of attention to handle it. Ling Guangjun sensed his success at the first attempt and became wild with joy, but before he could take another step, someone suddenly leapt out, dropping from the sky. Ling Guangjun said coldly, "How could there have been any guards here when they were all driven away when I arrived? Didn't you already left 7 days ago? What? Are you back to protect your master? I couldn't tell you were this devoted." It was fortunate that Xiāng Tóngxiù couldn't see him at first, cause as soon as he did, his legs softened even more. Though Ling Guangjun was quite good looking, but it was a type of soft but treacherous good looking. That pair of peach blossom eyes really was filled with frosty light like poisonous needles. When he smiled, he showed grim and pale teeth, especially suited to biting raw meat. Xiāng Tóngxiù braced himself and stood in front of Mo Beijun. "First, who said I came back to protect my master? Second, who told you he was my master? Ling Guangjun, then what does it meant for you to get in my way now?" Xiāng Tóngxiù said forcefully, throwing stones down a well. While he was talking random nonsense, his hands were shaking as he pointed at his own face with shivering fingers. "Just take a look, he beat me up into this state. This nephew of yours really has some good temper." Behind him, Mo Beijun spit out a mouthful of blood. It was definitely out of pure anger at him. Xiāng Tóngxiù lamented, "In these years, the broken ribs I've suffered could build another Maiga ridge, and I could drown myself in the blood I've spat. Devoted? Towards someone like this type of demon, who the fuck could be devoted? With how he's treated me, if Xiāng Tóngxiù could suffer in silence and swallow his anger without retaliation, then he's been the Ending Peak Lord for nothing." While saying this, Xiāng Tóngxiù absolutely did not dare to turn back and look at Mo Beijun's expression, though his back was about to frost over. Ling Guangjun laughed out loud. "Mo Bei, do you hear that? I really sympathize with you. You're always fated to be sold out and betrayed. How can you command the Mo Bei clan like this? If we really let you succeed, with your disposition, wouldn't our clan be constantly on the edge of collapse? You should listen to your uncle. You can relax and hand the important matters over to me. You should go." On the verge of achieving his cherished dream of many years, Ling Guangjun was in a magnanimous mood. He said to him generously, "How do you want to throw stones down a well?" With a mischievous laugh, Xiāng Tóngxiù activated a fire spell and flung it out behind him. Ling Guangjun felt a burst of sizzling heat hit him directly in the face, red light dancing madly before his eyes. The Mo Bei Ice clan loathed flame the most, especially this fire, which appeared not to be mundane fire, but the fire Xiāng Tóngxiù had shamelessly asked Shen Qingkai to make for him from a few grains of Xianyang tinder. Some fear got mixed in Ling Guangjun's loathing. He immediately retreated and covered his face, feeling astonished as he thought to himself, "I couldn't tell that the stupid and cowardly Ending Peak Lord of the rumors was actually this ruthless a character. I heard that Mo Beijun was quite good to him. Who could have thought that this servant was silently enduring for many years? He's this vicious as soon as he plays his hand, using immortal flame to burn Mo Beijun alive. It's not even as easy as dying, this fire will probably burn him straight to ashes. If he had used this spell on me just then, I would also be in quite a sorry state. Who knows if he still had a few grains of this fearsome tinder? No matter if he had them or not, this person can't be left around." However, after he finished calculating and stood firmly to look, he flew into a rage on the spot. Mo Beijun hadn't been devoured by a raging inferno but was shaded in the middle of clusters of flame. Just then, Xiāng Tóngxiù had not thrown his handful of tinder onto his body but had drawn a large circle of about a zhang around his body. The leaping and dancing Xianyang immortal fire encircled the two within it. Though Mo Beijun couldn't exit the circle, Ling Guangjun also could not enter. If he attempted a long-distance attack, his ice spells would be melted by the Xianyang immortal fire. Looking at it, it didn't look like an attack spell, but rather a protective circle. Realizing that he had been tricked, Ling Guangjun's face darkened. That vicious demonic energy Ling Guangjun had slapped into Mo Beijun was still darting about in his limbs and bones and causing trouble. He had fallen to one knee as his face alternated between turning green and white, unable to spare the effort to give an extra glance at the others. Shang Qinghua circled him in obvious fluster but couldn't assist him in any way. Ling Guangjun distantly went around the Xianyang fire circle, sneering as he walked. He said, "I misspoke earlier, you are far more than devoted. You're practically faithful enough to offer your life in sacrifice. You're willing to come back and throw away your life for this disappointing nephew of mine. But tell me, how long do you think this circle of fire of yours will last?" These words poked right in Shang Qinghua's sore spot. He had thrown out all of the tinders that Shen Qingkaiu had given him in one go, not leaving a single spare. He squatted by Mo Beijun's side, making prayers that were about as useful as injecting chicken blood. "Heavens, my king, did you hear that? He wants to kill me, your uncle wants to kill me. You have to assimilate it faster. I really don't know how long this circle of fire can last." Suddenly, with a giant crack of splitting stone, the icy dust and frosted ash above their heads began to rustle down. Shang Qinghua hadn't been squatting steadily, and wavered a couple of times with the leaping flames. Only to see Ling Guangjun remove a hand from one of the pillars in the corridor. "You thought that if you don't come out, I'd have no way to get to you." He wanted to collapse the ice fortress and smash Mo Beijun to death or bury him alive. Seeing the dense web of cracks crawl up the ice pillar and Ling Guangjun's second strike about to hit, Shang Qinghua said hurriedly, "Coming, I'm coming right now." So, like a long-suffering frog jumping into a frying pan, he slowly jumped out of the circle. "Once he's out, don't think of getting back in." Ling Guangjun, looming like a monster, and grabbed him with one hand. "What's the use of you coming out alone? Withdraw the fire." Fact was, he was a bit flustered. He didn't know how soon Mo Beijun would be able to suppress that bit of demonic energy. If he was able to do it before the Xianyang fire burned out, he would finish assimilating that martial prowess. Then, wouldn't today's rebellion become a giant farce? Shang Qinghua said, "I only know how to set fires, not put them out." "Ah! Ling Guangjun, then make him come out." Shang Qinghua, "This, my lord, look at the state of him right now, he couldn't move even if he wanted to come out." Ling Guangjun sneered and grabbed Shang Qinghua by his upper abdomen. He said amicably, "Then say, if your heart were to start freezing over, would he have a sudden impulse to come out?" Shang Qinghua, "If this type of sudden impulse could make him break through, I recommend that you, my lord, try having a sudden impulse and see if you can break in." And then he couldn't get any words out anymore. Ling Guangjun quietly hummed an ice spell, humming it into a cheerful yet malicious tune. "Mo Bei, your uncle really didn't expect that you would have a running dog who refuses to betray you, even in these circumstances. A good dog like this, wouldn't it be a pity if it were gone?" Ice started to crawl near his heart. Shang Qinghua's lips turned purple, but he raised his hand and said, "JJ Junshang. Ling Guangjun, speak." Shang Qinghua, "If you're going to freeze my heart like this, I can't scream aloud, it doesn't sound miserable enough, can't achieve the sudden impulse you want? I advise you hit me instead. I promise I'll do my best to scream very miserably." Ling Guangjun, "Oh. But, I'm very heavy-handed, if I can't control myself and beat you to death, what then?" Shang Qinghua, It's no problem, I can bear it. I'm used to it, always suffer your nephews." Before he had finished speaking, Shang Qinghua personally experienced how heavy-handed Ling Guangjun really were. He didn't use demonic energy and relied entirely on physical strength to attack. But Xiāng Tóngxiù could clearly hear the sound of every bone in his body breaking, the sound of his throat hissing like it was leaking air after spitting up too much blood. As his back teeth faintly started to loosen, Xiāng Tóngxiù thought, compared to his uncle and other demons, Mo Beijun was really too fucking gentle, too amiable, practically a little angel. The longer he delayed, the more Ling Guangjun's impatience pressed close to fury. Firmly stepping on his back and hauling up one of his arms, he grinned fiercely. "Didn't you promise you would try your best to scream very miserably? Why is your mouth so securely closed and still haven't let out a single sound?" This motion had some extremely bad associations for Xiāng Tóngxiù, and he hurriedly spat out the bubble of warm blood held in his mouth, screaming with great sincerity. Ling Guangjun said, "Not bad. It's a pity, it's still not miserable enough. I'll help you out." From his shoulder, came the terrible pain of tendons, flesh, skin, and bone ripping. Xiāng Tóngxiù opened his mouth, letting fear drown him, but he found that he couldn't make a single sound. But, this pain hadn't developed into an unsalvageable state. Suddenly, the arm that had been dragged behind him softly drooped down. A corner of a deep blue robe flapped in front of him, collar full of wind and snow. Mo Beijun had caught them off guard, plunging out of the fire circle to land a palm squarely on Ling Guangjun's chest. After being caught off guard by this strike to the chest, half of Ling Guangjun's chest collapsed, demonic energy streaming out 1,000 li like a giant hole had been punched through his whole body. His heart chilled. Compared to before, the power of this youngster's strike could not be spoken of in the same breath. In the end, he had been delayed and Mo Beijun had assimilated all the Mo Bei clan's martial prowess passed down through generations. So much so that he didn't even fear Xianyang immortal fire anymore and just passed straight through. Though he was full of resentment and dissatisfaction, by now he was likely no match for Mo Beijun at all, and could only hurriedly use ice to seal his own wounds and to transform into a stream of black wind to escape out of the ice fortress. Xiāng Tóngxiù was lying face pressed to the ground, so he didn't see any movement for a long while, and no one came to help him up. He mourned internally, is he still mad? No matter how you look at it, he had gotten beaten into this state for him and he was not even helping him up. This is too inexcusable. But, he then heard a heavy slam. Grimacing in pain, Xiāng Tóngxiù turned over with incomparable difficulty. Unexpectedly, Mo Beijun had also fallen over. Two silhouettes, fallen in different postures next to a raging fire circle, quietly, collapsed on the floor. He finally realized, Mo Beijun most likely had not finished absorbing the martial prowess yet and probably have not yet suppressed Ling Guangjun's demonic energy as well. Just then, he really did have a sudden impulse, fighting with all his strength to scare away Ling Guangjun at the last moment. Now, Mo Beijun had exhausted his last burst of energy and had been roasted crisp by the terrifying Xianyang immortal fire, so he collapsed on the floor. Though Mo Beijun was lying straight and stiff on the ground, unable to move even a finger, he was still forcefully staring at him with his eyes. Under that stare, Xiāng Tóngxiù was unable to continue peacefully lying down, and could only open his mouth to say, "That, my king you are, don't struggle, just lie down, and slowly assimilate that power." That gaze didn't subside in the least. Like he was bathed in a rain of needles, Xiāng Tóngxiù's heart was alarmed and his body was twitching. He finally managed to catch his breath and sit up, already trembling like he was suffering from Parkinson's disease. Now, Mo Beijun could finally properly listen to him talk. He took a deep breath, then said, my king, the truth is, I wouldn't have leave you in this sort of situation. I didn't know that it was that crucial junction when you were about to receive your inheritance. Why didn't you tell me a bit earlier about such an important event?" Mo Beijun used his expression to tell him, "Kneel down, cry and admit you were wrong, then I'll pardon you." The corner of Xiāng Tóngxiù's mouth twitched and he continued, "To tell the truth, you shouldn't have brought me. I can't do anything at all aside from letting you beat me up from time to time. See, just now I was beaten to this state and I could only buy you a little bit of time. You seriously injured your uncle, so he probably won't dare to come back again. You're almost done assimilating the powers, right? Then I'll just leave. Mo Beijun's expression had eased a bit, but upon hearing his last sentence, he immediately shot cold light from his eyes. Still leaving? You dare! Suddenly being shouted at while still hurting from head to toe, Xiāng Tóngxiù suddenly burst into burning anger, slapping the ground and yelling, "What don't I dare?" Of course, this strike couldn't scare Mo Beijun and only made Xiāng Tóngxiù's shoulder and arm burst into pain, making stars burst in his eyes. Either way, Mo Beijun couldn't move a limb, and Xiāng Tóngxiù grew bold in his fury, pointing at him and saying, "I'll tell you the truth then. I've endured you for very long, you pampered and spoiled young master, vile-tempered second-generation demon." This could be said to be monstrous audacity. Mo Beijun completely had a face full of disbelief. But, Xiāng Tóngxiù's many years of accumulated grievances spewed out at this moment, as powerful as a rainbow. You saw my temperament was not bad, that I'm easy to deal with, my cultivation also lacking, so you find it easy and satisfying to torment me, right? You thought Laozi was really this. What are you looking at? Do you have any objections? Laozi is your father. Call me father. I'm the only one who's so permissive to you. You try it with someone else? Bing Ger would beat you to death, the original goods Shen King Kaiu would shade you to death. No one likes getting beat up every day, and no one would really run around giddily all day after getting beat up every day. I'm not actually a dog. Even with a dog, if you give it 2 kicks every day, with time it'll also learn not to bother you anymore. Mo Beijun said, "Do you want to die?" In these sorts of circumstances, the intimidation factor of these words had suffered a large discount. Xiāng Tóngxiù said, "No. I not only dare leave, but I also dare do other things, do you believe it? This Peak Lord will right here, at this moment, beat you back for every time you beat me before." Mo Beijun said in anger, "You? Xiāng Tóngxiù, you, what you? Still you dare? I'll tell you, right now, I really do dare. Come." With this, he pulled back his sleeves, eagerly moving a fist in front of Mo Beijun's ashen face. Cold knives rustled from Mo Beijun's gaze, but Xiāng Tóngxiù was not frightened a bit as he swung a fist out with a strike rushing towards his face. Mo Beijun averted his face on instinct, only to feel the skin of his face tighten. A very unfamiliar feeling. A bit itchy, a little bit painful, but entirely not the strike he was expecting. 2 of Xiāng Tóngxiù's fingers pinched his cheek on one side, forcefully pulling out. "How is that? Does it hurt?" While pulling, he thought, "This is fucking not what Laozi was thinking of doing. Beat him, beat him while he can't move. Even if he's tugging on his face, no matter how you look at it, he's missing out himself." But there was nothing he could do. Truly, he couldn't get himself to beat this face. With his cheeks being pulled, Mo Beijun's words were unclear, but he persisted to say, "You're done." Xiāng Tóngxiù cackled. "You have backbone, you can still threaten me in this state. Father admires you." His other hand also joined in, pinching the other side of Mo Beijun's face, sometimes pulling in opposite directions, sometimes pressing them together. Mo Beijun's formerly noble and aloof image was wrecked into utter extermination by his pair of lowly hands. Xiāng Tóngxiù was still repeating, "It still doesn't hurt? Does it hurt now?" Mo Beijun did not yield his lofty character. It was no use, things like physical tears could not be obstructed by lofty character, and in the end, his cheeks were pulled until tears emerged at the corners of his eyes. "It hurts? That's right." Xiāng Tóngxiù released his claws. "When you beat me all the time, it's at least 10 times as painful as that. How does it feel? Spoiled brat." Mo Beijun was angered by this condescending spoiled brat of his until his face was bone white while his cheeks bore a large mark of green and red fingerprints, it really was a sight that shocked the eye and astonished the heart. When it came to it, Xiāng Tóngxiù really was frightened. Just then he had offended in a fervor and was satisfied for the time, but only began to fear being sent to the crematorium after the fact. Especially, after Mo Beijun's face had recovered its normal shape, that expression really was, his heart felt timid just seeing it. He hurriedly patted his hem, preparing to break into a run and leave. He slid a few large steps away at meteor speed, when Mo Beijun shouted behind him, "If you want to keep your legs, stay there and don't move." On reflex, Xiāng Tóngxiù obeyed the order. But he didn't dare turn around. "My king, I really am leaving." "Mo Beijun, shut up. Come back." Xiāng Tóngxiù reminded him and said, "Even if you are angry, don't come looking for me. After I leave, you absolutely will not be able to find me again, so don't make a useless effort." "So, my king, this is goodbye then." Mo Beijun was nearly roaring. "If you have the guts to leave, then don't let me see you again." Xiāng Tóngxiù turned a deaf ear. Walking 2 steps, he added another line. "I was very happy to meet you. Really, you're even more handsome than I had imagined." At this moment, he was in high spirits, radiant with delight, precisely the same as the expression he had on the very first moment he set pen to paper to write this character's first appearance. His true emotions and honest feelings towards the character under his pen. Reflecting after the fact, this really was embarrassing. But, with parting near at hand, embarrassment was only a fleeting thing. It's just that Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't understand, where was the agreed-upon parting near at hand? Why was it that it had already been a month since the system had released the return home function, and yet he was still idling his time away in the world of proud immortal demon Wei? Every time he poked open the system and faced the red and green yes and next time options, he would always end up in a daze and then choose the button on the right, closing the interface. Next time on top of next time, there really were many next times. Xiāng Tóngxiù blamed this on procrastination disease. All that was evil was due to this procrastination disease. He didn't dare return to Qingqiang Mountain for the time being. He didn't know if Mo Beijun would go up the Ending Peak to block him in anger. But, half of his savings was in some cave in Ending Peak, and the other half was in Mo Beijun's official residence on the northern border. So, in this last month, though Xiāng Tóngxiù looked at ease, in reality he was living frugally, dining on the wind and lodging in the open. If not for that bit of spiritual energy he still had to depend on, there wasn't much difference between him and the common vagrant wanderers. After wandering for nearly a month, he unexpectedly ran into a certain master-disciple pair, leisurely going on a scenic tour across the world. After realizing who it was, Xiāng Tóngxiù couldn't resist rubbing his eyes. After half a minute, he finally confirmed that the youth in plain cotton clothes but still dignified of deportment while carrying a fishing rod, lifting a basket of fish, was Luo Binghe, and after another half a minute, he confirmed that the one who persisted to the end in putting on refined immortal airs while carrying boxes of food, delivering food to him, was Master Shen, the Peak Lord Shen, Shen Qingqiu. "You're here acting out this cheerful romantic play of living in seclusion in the mountains, tossing Mo Beijun into the demon realm, and making me go force my way out of a predicament with him. How awful!" Xiāng Tóngxiù heaped silent curse upon silent curse, but how should he say it? When he saw these two, he felt really happy. Especially because he hadn't eaten a full meal for many days already. Don't roast him about why an immortal cultivator like him would still care about things like eating a full meal, the review sections roasted him enough. He wasn't from Kuxing Peak and didn't enjoy nifty tricks like Anidia. Having their rustic life disturbed by someone for no reason, Luo Binghe naturally had no good looks to give him, but seeing Shen Qingqiu's expression, he wouldn't show it on his face. But when Shen Qingqiu told him to go sit down in the house after exchanging a few greetings with Xiāng Tóngxiù, Binghe's face still darkened. These two had, quite sentimentally, built a small bamboo house in a place between jade waters and green mountains. The more Xiāng Tóngxiù looked, the more he felt that these two really were quite well off. Sitting on a rattan chair, he commented, "The house is not bad." Shen Qingkai waved his fan and said, "If you consider who built it, how could it be bad?" Xiāng Qinghua thickened his face and said, "Your days have really been much more comfortable than mine. I don't know if I could catch a bit of Cucumber Bro's light, and let me enjoy a carefree life for a while." Shen Qingkai, "Unfortunately, you've come at a bad time, we were just about to eat." Xiāng Qinghua, "You're too kind. Arriving early can't beat arriving on time, I see I came at just the right time. I'll see how your food is." After speaking, he rose and walked to the door of what he suspected was the kitchen, lifting up the curtain. Luo Binghe was wearing a light black robe with its sleeves pulled high up and had a severe expression as he silently knead dough. His expression was both severe and concentrated, though there's 2 patches of white on his face, a bit of flour on his eyelashes, like what he was pinching and pulling under his hands wasn't a ball of dough but a grand scroll covering everything under the sky. No 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 no. Xiāng Qinghua felt like his guts were splitting open, his heart about to burst. That stallion leaking tyrannical airs, subduing multitudes that he had created. The protagonist Bing Gur. He was kneading dough. Making noodles. Noodles, noodles, noodles. Endlessly on repeat. This really was a horror difficult to describe. Xiāng Qinghua silently retreated in defeat. He sat at the table, reaching out to find a cup of tea to drink and suppress his fright, but it was fished back by Shen Qingkai. "That's mine." Xiāng Qinghua's heart was still palpitating. "Do you have a second cup in this place of yours? What's wrong with letting me use it?" Shen Qingkai pointed at the kitchen. "You also know there isn't a second cup, as that's his. ... Do you dare use it? If you dare, I'll give it to you." Xiāng Qinghua's claws changed from pulling to pushing. "You elder can use it yourself, unfortunately, I cannot partake." Bing Gur continued to cook. The two chatted about this and that for a while. After listening to him relay the tale about the incident at the Mobei clan's ice fortress, Shen Qingkai expressed his doubts. "Really? Just like that?" Xiāng Qinghua said, "Is there any use for me to trick you about this sort of thing? What do you mean by just like that? Concerning my dignity, I definitely couldn't stay any longer." "That's not wrong per se." Shen Qingkai thought, then said, "But you don't seem like that sort of person." "What sort of person?" Shen Qingkai said amiably, "The kind that would care about dignity that much." Considering the strength of airplane shooting towards the sky's resolution, the thickness of his face, the tenacity of his vitality, he really didn't seem the type to run after getting a single beating from Mobei Jun. After all, he had endured all these years, how could he have suddenly become weak and sensitive, and be consumed by overwhelming sorrow over it? Xiāng Qinghua said bashfully, "Cucumber Bro, I only didn't hesitate to sell out my moral principles all the time to get monthly tickets and tips, and only became an ending peak lord on the way, but for you criticize me for this, then you're wrong." Shen Qingkai said, "The 2 reasons you gave, aren't they quite compatible with the conduct I'm criticizing?" Xiāng Qinghua, yeah, be a bit nicer to me, a bit softer, okay? Cucumber Bro, tell me, when is it best for me to return to the modern world? Shen Qingkai, you really want to return to the modern world? Your vision really does decline if you shoot your airplane too much. Wake up, you're just waiting for him to apologize, then take you back and continue to lightly beat you up 3 times a day. Before they had finished chatting, the meal was served. Luo Binghe carried over 2 bowls of noodles. White noodles and red broth, fresh and oily chopped green onion, garnished with a pile of tender slices of meat, its presentation extremely fine. But Xiāng Qinghua wouldn't stretch out his claws. Without needing Bing Gur to open his mouth and say it, only needing a seemingly careless glance, Xiāng Qinghua knew that there wasn't a portion for him. Shen Qingkai sighed, "I told you it was a bad timing. After all, it was the food Bing Gur had made with his own hands. something that not everyone had the right to eat. Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't have anything to say, so he just shrunk to the corner of the table, helplessly watching the two across from him split their chopsticks. After a while, Xiāng Tóngxiù finally couldn't watch this anymore and put a piece of meat in Luo Binghe's bowl while holding back a smile. He finally gave Xiāng Tóngxiù some mercy. "Forget it, stop teasing him. Your Shishu has been pitiful enough these days, you don't need to bully him anymore." Luo Binghe put that piece of meat in his mouth and said without lifting his head, "There's more in the pot." Xiāng Tóngxiù giddily went to the kitchen, shovel in hand. Holding the noodles, he slurped until his eyes were brimming with hot tears. This time he would really learn from this experience. In this world, the most reliable thing was indeed being Peerless Cucumber's friend from the same hometown. After he had mooched a meal of incomparably tasty noodles, Xiāng Tóngxiù was already pleased beyond his expectations and definitely not thinking to ask for lodgings. That's a joke. Truth was he didn't want to inevitably eavesdrop through Bingur's wall. Whether or not he could get enough sleep was one thing, but whether Bingur would cut off his ears and boil them with the noodles the next day was another. Look at what sort of godly days Xiāng Tóngxiù was living, then look at what sort of days he was living. Constantly comparing yourself to others will anger you to death. Really, this was preposterous. Clearly, he was the author, he was this world's creator deity, the Kami-sama. Can't you all be a bit nicer to him? Care for your creator. Protect your creator. Savoring the lingering taste of the only bowl of noodles his son had ever given him while using a piece of grass to pick his teeth, Xiāng Tóngxiù walked on the small path between the mountains. He walked and walked when suddenly, his foot slid out from beneath him. There was a ravine right next to the small path and Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't bring his sword. If he fell down there, there was no way he could fly back up. He started to curse himself. How can you slip when you're just walking on the road? Laozi isn't some manga female protagonist with the supreme skill of tripping over flat ground. Sitting down to look, there wasn't any suddenly appearing banana peel or small tree root but only a small puddle. However, that puddle was frozen over. The short weeds all around were also being covered by a faint layer of frost. Xiāng Tóngxiù frantically rolled and crawled over to the closest rock face, back towards it looking for a bit of security. He had thought that dilly-dallying along, tempting death by not returning until Mo Beijun suddenly showed up knocking at his door would be the most disastrous possibility. But when a certain someone walked out from behind the craggy rocks and drooping vines, he finally discovered that things could be even worse. Ling Guangjun said, "Yo, just look at who did I found." Xiāng Tóngxiù laughed drily. "Right. Who is this?" Ling Guangjun patted the top of his head and said, "Mo Beijun nearly overturned the whole northern border looking for you, but you know how to hide, ah." Junshang is joking, when was I hiding? Right? I was also wondering, what was there to hide from? Last time at the ice fortress, you performed such a meritorious service but Mo Bei didn't even have the chance to reward you. I can't figure it out. Why did you run to this poor place in the middle of nowhere? Oh, it's nothing, nothing. Xiāng Tóngxiù repeatedly waved his hands. It's nothing to do with me. Last time, it was all Mo Beijun relying on his own skill. He had declined taking credit, fearing that Ling Guangjun would also remember his part in his defeat at the ice fortress last time. But unexpectedly, Ling Guangjun's expression suddenly changed with his tone turning harsh upon hearing this. What are you trying to say? Do you meant that even without a lowly shameless treacherous Kangkyang mountain dog who jumped out and spoiled all my hard work that the damned youngster could have defeated me alone? Yes is wrong, no is also wrong. Xiāng Tóngxiù bemoaned the injustice to the skies. How is that possible? Mo Beijun defeated Junshang only because he relied on a sneak attack. Ling Guangjun, are you ridiculing me? Xiāng Tóngxiù. Thinking of it, oh right, the one who did a sneak attack first was clearly Ling Guangjun himself. The horseshit slapped back on the horse's leg, no matter what he said was wrong. After hugging people's thighs with a subservient smile for decades, this was the first time Xiāng Tóngxiù had encountered a character that was this hard to deal with. He shut his mouth, a mournful look on his face. Ling Guangjun sneered, "Mo Bei, that youngster, definitely never could have thought that I would just casually run into the person he expended all his energy on but couldn't find. So, I must use you well." Xiāng Tóngxiù said hurriedly, "Jun's hang. If you want to catch me and use me to threaten Mo Bei Jun, it's completely useless. I'll tell you the truth about why I want to run away. Fact was, last time while he couldn't move, I couldn't resist beating him up. You know that damn temper of his. With that sort of opportunity, it's hard not to hit him, right? But afterwards, there was nothing I could do. I was afraid that he would retaliate, so I just ran. He looked all over for me, probably because he wants to beat me back. I don't have even half bit of value in his eyes. At most I'm just a convenient sandbag and attendant." Ling Guangjun paused, then said impatiently, "What are you saying so much to me for? Do I look like the type of demon who'd do this sort of shameless thing? It's hard to say. It wasn't very proper when you sneak attacked Mo Bei Jun. However," Xiāng Tóngxiù voiced sincerely, "you don't." Ling Guangjun, "Then do I look like the type of demon who's patient?" Xiāng Tóngxiù, "That I don't know." "Then, Jun's hang, how do you want to use me?" "How to use?" Ling Guangjun laughed, "Kill you to vent my anger. Is this way of using very hard to think of?" Xiāng Tóngxiù froze, then said, "That's not necessary, wasting your resources with is. Jun's hang, you probably can use me to threaten Mo Bei Jun or whatever. It would be a pity if you just kill me." Ling Guangjun, "I don't have a half bit of value in his eyes, at most I'm just a convenient sandbag and attendant." Who said these words again? Xiāng Tóngxiù, "We humans have a saying that modesty is a virtue." Before he had finished the word virtue, he suddenly tossed out his hand, yelling, "Watch this Xianyang immortal fire!" Numerous balls of roiling red flame shot through the air. Frightened, Ling Guangjun hurriedly darted to the side to dodge. However, the flames extinguished immediately after they hit the ground. It clearly wasn't the inextinguishable by either wind or water Xianyang immortal fire. This lowly Xiāng Tóngxiù was just tricking him. Ling Guangjun became enraged as new resentment fanned the old hate. Casually brushing his hand over a not quite fallen drop of dew on a drooping leaf, he aimed right at Xiāng Tóngxiù and attacked. Xiāng Tóngxiù only felt his calf cool before his leg had already been shot through by an ice bullet solidified by demonic energy. He couldn't run even if he wanted to and could only crushed down to the ground. Ling Guangjun stood up and used one of his foot to lightly step on the kneecap of Xiāng Tóngxiù's other leg. "You're just like a cockroach who's too good at running. I'll first destroy your two legs. See how you'll run then." Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't have any integrity to stay unyielding in the face of destruction as his soul flew out in fright. "My king! Call the king!" And the king came. An ink-blue silhouette suddenly appeared like a monster. With a caw, two balls of black energy collided. Ling Guangjun was holding one of his broken leg at the knee and became crazed with anger. "You youngster, do you have to come this promptly? Can't you wait just a bit longer? Can't you wait until I stomp him down then arrive?" Mo Bei Jun broke his other knee with a kick, then said coldly, "I can't." Ling Guangjun was quite strong-willed. Both his knees were broken into powder, but he didn't scream and instead cursed him out more hysterically. "You really are the same type as your dead-faced father. You could have been like anyone, but you just had to be like him. Turtle and tortoise born in the same nest, he steals and you also steal. He died early, why don't you die early?" "Fuck!" Mo Bei Jun said, "If you don't stop cursing, I'll send you in to keep him company." Xiāng Tóngxiù stared, tongue-tied. Though he knew Ling Guangjun always held a deep resentment towards his older brother, he never thought it would already be deep enough to completely lose his elegance to shout abuses where anyone could hear. Amidst Ling Guangjun's crazed curses, Mo Beijun casually flipped his hand, flipping him into the ravine. Falling down the ravine like this, a human might die, but a demon definitely would not. Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't remind him to pull the grass up by its roots. It was his own uncle, and his father had definitely told him that whatever Ling Guangjun did, to be a bit indulgent. In truth, Xiāng Tóngxiù didn't want to remind him of anything at all. If he could also forget his own existence, that would be even better. Mo Beijun withdrew his gaze from the bottom of the ravine. Stop! While dragging his injured calf, Xiāng Tóngxiù was about to furtively slip away. Not wanting to be broken by his single shout, he froze in place. A pervert caught red-handed didn't even have as guilty a conscience as him. Hearing the sound of Mo Beijun's footsteps treading frost and cracking ice as he walked over, he hurriedly covered his own face. Mo Beijun seemed to have an especially fierce temper today, not reserved at all. What are you doing? Xiāng Tóngxiù said shyly, didn't you say don't let me see you again? There's no way for you not to see me now, so I'll just cover my face. Mo Beijun lifted his hand, and Xiāng Tóngxiù covered his head out of habit. Mo Beijun separated his two arms and stretched them straight as if he was at the end of his patience. If you let me see you do this sort of thing again, you won't need to keep your hands. These words had some of that teeth-clenching fury. Xiāng Tóngxiù reflexively wanted to cover his head again, but managed to choke it down for the sake of this pair of hands that had done a heroic deed of typing on the keyboard. Panicking, he began to shake and shake until Mo Beijun said, "What do you have to fear from me?" Xiāng Tóngxiù, in fact, I don't. It's just that I always feel like you're going to give me a few hits, my king. Before, hitting or kicking, it's whatever, but now you're already officially succeeded to the throne, your cultivation cannot be compared to before. You can make raging waves beat the shore, flying stones pierce the clouds at once. I'm afraid I can't endure your few hits anymore. Mo Beijun said, shut up. Follow me, let's go. Xiāng Tóngxiù threw caution to the wind and firmly threw himself on the stone wall like a lizard. I won't go. No, I want to go home. I want to return to my old home. Mo Beijun said, if I let you hit back, then will you not go? Xiāng Tóngxiù, especially since staying meant getting beat up by you 3 times every day, might as well, what? Hit back. Let him hit back? Mo Beijun was willing to let him hit back? So, if he didn't go home, Mo Beijun was willing to let him hit back? Overly shocked as countless waves of words cycled through Xiāng Tóngxiù's brain like climbing endless stairs. Mo Beijun lifted his chin. He was stiff and unmoving with an upright aura of hit. However, I won't retaliate, but was stealthily watching him out of the corner of his eye. Seeing him not move after a while, Mo Beijun seemed to suddenly become happy. Although when he got happy, it only looked like the tip of his eyebrow raised a bit higher. Mo Beijun said, still not doing it. Time is up. You can't hit me anymore. Let's go. Wait a minute, I didn't say I wouldn't do it. There's a time limit. With the corner of his brow hiding that extremely covered hint of pleasure, Mo Beijun dragged Xiāng Tóngxiù and ran. Xiāng Tóngxiù immediately began to wail. Ayah, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, my king, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Mo Beijun indeed looked at him, and also saw the blood dripping from his leg. After a moment of silence, he tried to carry Xiāng Tóngxiù on his shoulder. Xiāng Tóngxiù hovered between life and death. My king, spare me, my king, spare me. If you carry me like this the whole way, this leg of mine really will be crippled. Mo Beijun asked, then what should I do? With both eyes filled with tears, Xiāng Tóngxiù attempted, what about, first find me a doctor. With a click of his tongue, Mo Beijun turned and left. A gust of cold wind blew by, the abandoned Xiāng Tóngxiù was dumbstruck like a wooden chicken. This was, did he thought he was too much trouble? After some time, Mo Beijun returned and he was dragging a handcart stolen from who knows where. The wooden chicken finally became a live chicken. The grand and stately demon race second-in-command, noble and cool Mo Bei clan chief who was dignified and precious, ended up dragging a broken-down handcart. This scene was truly impressive. With a pu, Xiāng Tóngxiù broke down again. Seeing the blue veins faintly jumping on Mo Beijun's forehead, he hurriedly knit his brow and started crying out, "Ayo! Ayo!" After crying a few times, Mo Beijun grabbed him up and set him primly on top of the cart. This crooked and broken-down handcart was probably stolen from who knows which farming family's courtyard, was probably used to carry fodder, firewood, slop buckets, and things such as those. Now that Xiāng Tóngxiù was sitting on it, he raised his eyebrows and acted all loftily as if he was an awe-inspiring presence. Those not in the know might even think he was an esteemed Zhuang Yuan who has strenuously studied for 10 years, received a marriage proposal gifted from the gods who had gone out to welcome him with striking gongs and beating drums. This really was the cycle of karma. The first time he had seen Mo Beijun, he also used a handcart like this to pull the unconscious Mo Beijun to rent a room. A poem as proof: river flows east 30 years, river flows west 30 years. Handcart turns back and forth, arrives at my house next year. Haha. Xiāng Tóngxiù declared, filled with a fluttering immortal air, "I want to eat noodles." That bowl of noodles from Binggur was really delicious, but it was too little. He only saved a few noodles for him, it wasn't enough to satisfy him. Mo Beijun, n. Xiāng Tóngxiù emphasized, pulled noodles. Mo Beijun, all right. Having won an inch, Xiāng Tóngxiù asked for a mile. You have to make it. The handcart abruptly stopped as Mo Beijun stood in place. A faint cold of unknown origin drifted over. Xiāng Tóngxiù was immediately frightened, creasing his brow and moving his gaze. I'll make it, of course, I'll make it. I was speaking without thinking, he. The ideal was so plump, but the reality was so skinny. After a while, the handcart wheels slowly began to move again. Mo Beijun, in front, said without looking back, I'll make it. He said what? He said he'd make it. Make what? Pulled noodles? This Mo Beijun who was willing to let him hit, willing to make noodles. What day is it today? He's striking it rich today. Xiāng Tóngxiù decided. He's going to take up his old profession. This pen name airplane shooting towards the sky is going to boldly rush back into the fray. What should he write? Xiāng Tóngxiù slapped his thigh. He heard that Lu Sumianhua's resentment of Chushan was selling like hot cakes. He'll just go along with the flow and write then. Though he himself was upstanding beyond compare, if there are people who were willing to read, then there's a market for it. If there's a market for it, then he dared to write. Airplane shooting towards the sky was best at going with the flow. Whatever is popular is what he'll write, that's right. The first step would be to figure out a good title that would be well received by the masses. Secret Annals of Qingjing Peak. My disciple can't be that cute. Shizun is so tender like this, or something like that. He still hadn't decided and would need to mull over it first. His writing in this genre was not as good as Lu Sumianhua, but that's fine. Airplane shooting towards the sky was never selling quality. In addition, Lu Sumianhua, the 3 Daoist nuns, that whole circle of assistant writers included, Airplane didn't really like their work, as in the end, it was only all about Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe. Limiting the scope to these two was way too narrow. Fact was, with how he saw it, it was entirely possible to be more daring and unbridled. For example, if you're calling it resentment of Chunshan, why limit yourself to 1 CP? With characters like Lu Qingge, wouldn't it be too much of a pity if you didn't write him? Yu Qingyuan is also a beautiful man with a stately bearing, accomplished in business and with a very proper family. Mu Shidi and Wei Shixing, those ones weren't the male gods in the eyes of the world but could be written as NPC. Why be afraid that no one will read if you mess around and let them stew? In short, as long as he was bold enough, shameless, crossed out, enough, didn't care for his own face, crossed out, enough, sooner and later he'd once again become a hegemon of this land's literary circles. He wouldn't even need to sell homemade soap to become a prosperous and dazzling he hua. Airplane shooting towards the sky stuck up his legs, the handcart creaking and swaying along on the bumpy mountain road. The evening sun descended in the west as Mobei Jun pulled him along, going to who knows where direction. Though the disasters were too many to repeat, chickens flying and dogs jumping about, everything in disorder, writing style like an elementary schooler, maybe the more serious readers couldn't even resist throwing down the book and cursing, "What dog shit is this?" But, airplane shooting towards the sky Juju was used to looking for excuses for his own fraudulent behavior. He could toss out 1,000 "it's only" to smooth things over. For example, "It's only a novel. Be a dear and just chill. Why so serious? It's just something I wrote for fun. Be a bit generous to me, everyone. It's just a mindless satisfying read, what were you hoping to see? It's only. It's only. It's only that he really, really liked this story he wrote."